Good afternoon. Today is the 4th of February and I'd like to talk to you about a very relevant topic that's on my mind at the moment. It's not what you might think. There has been some news in the last 24 hours that I will be covering at some point later this week, but this is something that's actually very close to hearts of quite a few people I know. Mr. Franks, my long-suffering videographer, and I discussed this the other day, and it's actually, why are we so attached to our cars, particularly when we're trying to sell them? So those of you who are new to the channel might not know that our 2014 MG3 that we sold at the weekend had been with us a long time. The reason why we bought that car initially was because my 1996 Rover R8 216 SLI automatic was not suitable for my lady wife to learn to drive in. First of all, she needed to learn in a manual. The car wasn't particularly safe, despite having one airbag. Yes, you know, some of the early ones don't have any at all. And the car wasn't the most reliable one I've ever had. In terms of Rovers, it's one of the better ones, but you know, even so, it wasn't that reliable, but I still loved it. So we needed something a bit more modern, something which was a bit more sort of solid in terms of anything that happened, and something that was more reliable. And naturally, the MG3 was very reliable. There were a couple of problems with it, but in the grand scheme of things, if you look at MG3s and the issues that they can have, we didn't really suffer from too many of those. My lady wife initially didn't really like the car. The colour was not right for her. She was a bit concerned about what would happen if she damaged alloy wheels, which, you know, actually we did take some action on that, got them refurbished and put the alligators on to stop them getting damaged, which, my gosh, that saved us so much grief having those alligators on. But after a while she, you know, got quite attached to it in quite an unusual way. Now, this isn't someone who has been driving very long. She doesn't drive that frequently, and she's only been driving in terms of, you know, on her own, as opposed to having somebody with her, since about October 2017 when she passed a test. You know, she did take some lessons many years ago, but up until about 2016 she hadn't taken any for a while, and living in London she didn't need a car, so that was the first car that she had. She didn't even drive very much. I normally drive when we're together, so that was, you know, not maybe so much of a case for someone to get attached to something, but she really did. And we found out on you know, the evening before we actually sold the car, just how much she was attached to it. And this is a funny thing, cars are not anything to do with emotion. They have no emotion. They're objects. They are made of tens of thousands of components, and none of these are composed of living matter. I mean, if you've got leather seats, I suppose, in your car, then they were living at some point, and the, you know, oil that is used to make the plastic, or the petrol or diesel that fuels the car, that was once living, but there's nothing that currently is alive in the car. So why do we get so attached to these things? And why, even if someone's not a petrol head, isn't into cars, do they get so emotional about the departure of a car? First of all, I think it represents something to have a car and own a car. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's a representation of freedom, and it gives you a space to think and to, I don't know, to pray if you pray, and to listen to music, and to be in this kind of space on your own. You have this freedom that isn't dictated by timetables on public transport or anything like that. And the things that you think about, the things that you talk about, you know, if you've got a hands-free kit in the car like I do, they can mean a lot of places you go to, rather than just arriving on a type of train that, you know, might mean something to you at one point. It's not likely that you'll get so attached to that unless you know, on a Flying Scotsman or something. And some people get attached to a certain type of train, but it's more likely you'll get attached to a car because you spend a lot more time with it, particularly if you drive a lot. I think you know, if I see a type of car that I used to own, I remember it myself. And so it's a funny thing, you know, they're not really the most important thing. There's far more important things in life than what sort of car you have and what condition it's in and things like that. These aren't really, in some sense, that important, but, you know, having just bought a car that's a bit like a project car, the closest thing I'll get probably ever to having one, there are things I would like to do to it. There are things I'd like to do to smarten it up. I want to take it to some shows. And you realise that just because something's really old and, you know, of not a lot of value to someone else, the value that something has to you is tremendous. Certainly when I was younger, the Volvo that my mother had from 1990 to 2001, and that was the only car that was in the family at the time, that had a lot of emotional resonance. We had an accident in that car, and, you know, the car saved us from any injury. We were all unhurt when we had the accident. You know, my brother and my sister and my mother were all in the car when the accident happened, and the car, you know, prevented us from having any injury. The car went all over the place. We did several trips abroad in that car. So when we got rid of it, it was the end of an era, and it signifies something of a loss. It's like when somebody passes away, even if not necessarily, you know, the car is written off or something, maybe just it's sold and, you know, you don't want to part with it. I know many people who are watching this have lovely old cars that they will not sell. They don't want to part with them. They've got them, and either they're on the way to having them the way they want, or they already have got them in that space, and they can't think about what would happen if they were to sell it. And it's funny, you know, we're not the only ones in this. And this is what I realised with my lady wife the other night. She doesn't particularly like cars as an idea. She didn't live with a car for most of her life. And yet, that little car that we had, it was only 3 years we had it or thereabouts. It meant an awful lot to her, more so than I think we both realised. I think one of the things that gets to a lot of people I know is that there's a lot of legislation at the moment about removing cars from certain places, banning certain types of cars from certain cities, putting controls on emissions and things like that. And if we have a certain car that we're attached to, it doesn't even have to be a car that we think is the best, it's just ours. We don't want to change it. We don't want to get something else because we like the one that we've got, you know, deep down, even if we say we don't. And this is the thing, we're complex people. We're not people who will necessarily like all the legislation that comes, because I think we've got a lot invested in our cars and a lot invested in our relationship with them. You know, we have to service them, we have to pay money towards tax, we have to pay money towards insurance, we have to pay you know, money to have them cleaned. There's a lot invested in these little things to get us around. And having recently joined the Astra H Twin Top Owners Club on Facebook, there are so many cars in that group which are modified that people would consider to be a bit like, you know, their dream cars, the ones that they want to have, that put their personality on. And our MG3 was very lightly modified with the red alligators, which, you know, did protect the alloy wheels after we had them refurbished, but also it was a sort of personal touch which marked that car out as ours. And, you know, the Astra is lightly modified as well, so it's not the same as everybody else's. And particularly if you've got a car like that you've invested something in, it does really feel like part of you. So there we are. That's just a very brief little sort of vlog on what it is to have to sell a car that you get attached to, even if you're not into cars or you think you're not bothered about them. I'd really like to hear your thoughts about this. Actually, it's a topic that, you know, Mr. Franks maybe will comment on as well, because he's the one who actually came up with this idea. But yes, what's been the most difficult car you've ever sold? Why do you think we are so attached to our things, even if, you know, the cars aren't the most exciting, they still mean something to us. Just put that in the comments below. Like this video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. So say you are ready to move your car on, or you don't have one at the moment. I know there are people who watch my videos who don't even have cars. You know, that's just great too. If you wish me to source a car for you, then my Facebook page is facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting, and the website is www.lloydvehicleconsulting.co.uk. Thank you ever so much indeed for watching.